Okay, so since you fairly recently carried out research as to the state of customer communications, and I guess the sort of high level, and maybe not a surprise, bearing in mind everyone's gone sort of AI crazy, but the research reveals that virtually all businesses are going to incorporate AI, artificial intelligence, within their customer comms this year. I mean, did that surprise you, the level of sort of, I think it was 97%, or was that pretty much as you thought was the case?
That's such a good question, Phil, because I feel like when I first read the response, I was like, well, of course that would be the case. We expect people to be, jumping on to this new, well, I can't even call it new technology, but they should be, moving in line with how technology is advancing and customer expectations are advancing as well. But I will say I was surprised that we were at 97% or implementing or planning to implement this year. That feels very fast to me.
And and again, I'm not sort of casting aspersions as to your survey respondents, but do you think some of them almost felt under pressure to say that was when they were going to do even? So do you think you might have a slightly falsely high just because everyone thought, well, I better say I'm going to go in AI, otherwise I might, yeah, or do you think it's a pretty honest reflection, or is that a sensible question? Even I don't know.
Yeah, I do think it's an honest reflection. People want to, and they know that they have to. Then, of course, business realities come into play, and that's maybe where they will fall short on the actual execution. But is there a desire to, implement AI and leverage it? Absolutely.
Okay, and in terms of what the research uncovered in from a consumer customer point of view, were there some particular expectations that are either new or just reconfirming that this is what customers are wanting from their businesses in terms of the customer communication strategy?
Yeah, I think it underscores what we know, which is people want personalized, relevant, and timely communications, and that's definitely what we at Sinch help deliver. But I think it does paint a clearer picture on the exact pain points of why companies are falling short on delivering that.
And in terms of the way businesses are responding, I mean, I guess omni-channel omni-channel engagement is maybe the main thing, but just are businesses responding in the right way, as far as you're aware, to what the customers are wanting, or is there a bit of a disjoint between what the customers want and what businesses are delivering?
I definitely think there's a disconnection here. So, despite technological advancements and communication channels maturing, we are definitely seeing that disconnect between what companies can deliver and what customers want. And the two stats that really stood out to me are two-thirds of businesses think their communications are integrated. Yet the biggest frustration that customers ultimately deal with is receiving unwanted, outdated, and irrelevant messages. So clearly, something isn't quite working.
And I guess at least do businesses understand what customers want and then they maybe just failing to deliver, or do they not even understand that in today's world customers really want to choose the sort of how, where, and when they get the communications? So do businesses get that bit, or do they not even understand that before they then start trying to respond?
I think by and large, they definitely understand that. That's what we see when we talk to our customers. Where they fall short is things like internal silos. You've got different teams that communicate with your customer base, and they are typically working out of different systems, or they have different business KPIs that they need to hit. So even just breaking down those silos is a big barrier. And then, of course, you also have the barrier of just technological integration. So because they're working out of different systems, how do you actually bring all of those together that they work in a seamless manner? And that means fueling insights from your CRM into your communication strategy, your ticketing system, making sure that your email provider talks to your SMS provider, that you exactly know what the conversation or relationship history what was all about when you talk to a customer when you switch channels. And I think that's the biggest thing. There is a very clear expectation nowadays from customers that channels need to be able to carry over the conversation context. And I feel like that's an increased expectation that we are seeing. It's no longer a nice to have, it definitely is a must have. And when you don't deliver that, customers are extremely frustrated. I mean, the majority of them mention that it is frustrating to them when they have to repeat information. And I think you and I know that ourselves, Phil, right? You're starting a chat on a website and then they say, oh, we got to transfer you to an agent. And you start from the very beginning, responding to the exact same questions over and over again. And that's just a big pain point that many businesses haven't been able to solve yet.
Okay, and in terms of the research, I think there were four sort of key findings, or at least bullet point findings that I bumped into. The first one we've sort of semi-covered, I guess, is that there's this rapidly increasing adoption of AI, and I'm maybe rather than just you confirm that, are you aware of the types of AI? Because I guess we people maybe think of things like chatbots, which have been around for a while, but are people moving beyond that type of thing, you doing more things with AI, or are we still in the relatively early, I won't say unsophisticated, but basic ways of using AI when it comes to communications?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's definitely accelerating. You're 100% right. We talked about the stat, 97% of companies plan to or are already using AI. It's really typically it revolves around personalization, leveraging chatbots, and that could be both voice bots or chatbots on your website, for example, or delivering predictive comms. And so those are pretty table stakes use cases, I would say. But that's also because consumers, I would say, are cautiously optimistic. So you have both sides of the coin where businesses need to get up to speed and they need to start delivering what customers expect. But on the other hand, customers also aren't quite sure if they truly can trust AI. And so with that, what we are seeing is that adoption of AI is both generational and situational. And so what I mean by that is millennials and Gen Z, probably no surprise to us, are really embracing AI-powered interactions for speed and ease of use. So they're very happy to interact with a chatbot, for example. 71% of Gen Z actually said that they would work with an AI or with a chatbot, sorry, that was trained on support documentation. Now, that changes quite drastically when you start looking at older generations because they tend to be a little bit more cautious and concerned about transparency and data usage. So that 71% drops down to 20% when you look at what boomers are willing to do. And then when we take a look at AI adoption being situational, it really means what is the ultimate use case? What are we hoping to deliver? People feel more comfortable to reschedule an appointment than share deeply personal health details, for example, with a chatbot, which makes sense because you still need to build up that trust.
Okay, yeah. So you've highlighted there the sort of generational uh, differences in AI trust between the younger folk. I guess yeah, as you say, no surprises. Perhaps they're maybe even too trusting of some of this digital technology as opposed to the older folks. But I guess is it reasonable for all customers, no matter their profile, to expect to be given choices and the relevant choices for them, or do say the older generation just have to accept that over time they'll all get shoehorned or railroaded into interacting with AI because more and more organizations are I mean, even just I use phone banking, but one of the few left, and I love it. But there's every time I ring them up, they're trying to persuade me to use the website and AI, etc. So everyone's trying to push you down that. Do you think that is just inevitably going to happen, or do you think um, if you like, the leading organizations will understand that there still does need to be this omni-channel? So, AI, yes, more and more, but still the personal touch. A lot of people will appreciate that.
Yeah, I think businesses have to understand that their customers want choice. The survey specifically called out 58% of consumers want to choose their preferred channel, but I think we all know that that is the case. It really depends on what problem you're looking to solve, the situation you're in at that moment, how quickly you need a response. And so customers expect to get their various communications on different channels, right? Email, for example, is still well alive and kicking because those are things that It allows you to open that on your own timeline, for example. Whereas if things are timely or urgent, you get a notification that your flight was delayed, for example, or your table is ready at a restaurant. Well, those are things that you want to know immediately. And that's where, for example, you would want to get an SMS. So this idea of reaching your customers when and where they want isn't necessarily new, but I do think it is evolving from, omni-channel being the end all be all strategy. We absolutely need to deliver omni-channel strategies for our customers, but ultimately we need to do it on their terms. And that means it has to be relevant and it does have to be consistent. So more channels doesn't mean better communication.
And do you think there is a danger that businesses they are just attracted by the fact that AI can replace humans or just is less expensive, even if it's augmenting humans, and therefore, they just see that and just rush towards that without, doing what you say, understanding that plenty of their customer base maybe just aren't that interested or certainly don't want to be shoehorned into one particular way of communicating with businesses. Just your thoughts as to will we have to accept over time? Because I'm thinking again, some industries where there is very limited choice, we all have to accept. I mean, trying to get hold of your mobile phone provider, for example, complete waste of time. But there's only a few of them, so do they care? Because we all get treated the same. Is that going to happen eventually in other spaces, or is there enough? Do you think businesses that will understand that personal touch with customers will actually, give them a real advantage over competition?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think that your communication strategy is your customer experience strategy, right? At the end of the day, the way you communicate with your customers is such a huge part of the experience that you can deliver. And we know that good experiences are absolutely a factor that drives loyalty and higher retention rates over time for businesses. So it's prudent for businesses to want to deliver on that promise for their customers. I do think that businesses are also cautiously optimistic. We're not seeing, at least within our own customer base, everybody just jumping on this bandwagon and saying quickly we need to have an AI chatbot or a voice bot implemented. Rather, still are concerns about, well, how do I integrate this appropriately? What does this mean for data security or privacy reasons in terms of the data that I'm collecting, for example? And so I would say people want to get on board, but they still have questions that need to get answered.
Okay, and then I think the final bullet point, if I remember, was about rich communication services. So, please tell us a bit more about what those are, and I think they are gaining traction. So, yeah, just talk us through that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rich Communication Services, or RCS, is essentially messaging 2.0, if you will. It helps us with that shift from, more transactional one-way messages, which we're a little more used to when it comes to SMS, to being able to provide those more conversational engagements, which customers actually really want, right? They want to be able to build that relationship with the brands that they work with. And so think of RCS as almost delivering an app-like experience directly within your native messaging app. So just like when you'd open up an SMS, you will directly from that screen be able to, there'll be like image carousels or buttons, or you could actually go through an entire purchase process or rebook your flight, for example, or maybe upgrade your mobile plan, like we are just talking about, without actually having to download anything or get redirected to any other site.
Yeah, no, that makes you. I have to say, I'm sure I'm not the only one. You dread when you open an email at the top, it says no reply at, and you think, okay, well, where do I go if I want to, if I want to follow this up? So I guess to that point, that, as you say, they're replacing that sort of one way with a more conversational approach. So makes complete sense. And I guess it'd be good to understand, clearly you've carried out this research, and where is it that Sinch fits within? We discussed the sort of customer communications landscape. What is it that you bring to that? Where do you sit within in this landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a leader in what we call cloud communications. And so ultimately that means we help businesses across the globe deliver those business critical communications through channels like messaging, which includes SMS, MMS, RCS, like we just chatted about, email, and voice. And so as a business, our mission actually is to what we call pioneer the way the world communicates. And that ultimately boils down to reimagining how companies connect with their customers to keep them engaged, informed, safe, and happy. And so those really are the four core use cases that we typically see when it comes to effectively communicating with your customers. And we help provide that underlying infrastructure, excellence, and expertise to do that.
And in terms of the way you engage with customers, I mean, do they just knock on your door or email you or whatever and say, we want this, deliver it? Or is it much more of a, we're aware that we need to go in this direction. How can you help us? And do you have a discussion, as we've had this conversation, sort of explaining the pros and cons of various approaches and then help them arrive at a decision? Or as I say, is it just literally they tell you what they want and you deliver it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We serve over 175,000 different businesses across the globe. So with that, we have everything from your mom and pop dry cleaner around the corner all the way to your Fortune 100 companies. And so it depends what problems they're looking to solve and what their needs are. We have people who come to our website and they do a trial and they self-serve, they get signed up, and they're off and running, sending emails or SMS messages, within minutes. And then we have people who engage with us through it can be multi-week, multi-month long engagement to help understand what does their communication strategy look like today? What are their needs? What is their internal tech stack? They might even bring in a partner like a systems integrator to help make sure that they actually implement things properly and in a scalable way. So I would say we can really serve businesses and customers of all types and sizes and all needs, but we definitely do provide that expertise around, how to scale your communication strategy, where to start, how to think about the channels you should be using, and how to kind of feed it into your overall tech stack as well.
Okay, and in terms of the future, I mean, obviously it's still, I guess, relatively early days, but I suppose at some point what we've been discussing will become almost table stakes. So then it's the sort of what do you add on? I mean, do you whether you could, I guess you might not want to tell us the secrets of what you're planning, but the sort of what do you see as following on from this once people have got much more used to omni-channel and the nuances of the different generations, etc. Are there more things that are down the line that you're aware of already, or is it pretty much this is what it is, and once you've done it you can sit back, relax, and communicate well with your customers, if you like?
Yeah, that would be great. I guess when I think about the future of communication strategies, I would say they have to be channel agnostic, intelligent, and secure. We touched a little bit on it being channel agnostic or kind of that evolution of omnichannel. We also touched on it having to be secure, right? Because that trust factor still is something that customers grapple with. And what we didn't touch on, though, I guess, is intelligence. And what I mean by that is not just infusing AI for AI's sake, but how do you make sure you really you deeply understand conversation context, relationship history, and you bring that into the fold to be able to deliver those personalized and relevant communications. And I think that really is the key. And there's many people that are trying to solve that in different ways, but that ultimately will unlock, I would say, rich communications, a better experience, and ultimately turn into, longer term loyal customers for you.
Okay, and in order to do that, I guess the problem is, as with a lot of this AI stuff, is you may have a lot of data, but it's maybe not in the right locations or in the right format. So is I don't know, is that something you help folks, or is that somebody else does that? But it's important that people obviously have that data in a usable format, and then they can, as you say, start interrogating it, using it to build up a much more sophisticated profile of customers.
It's a very complex problem to solve, and I have not seen anybody crack that nut, I will say, just yet. At Sinch, we will be providing a different type of data set than the business themselves, for example, have. Like every year we deliver over 900 billion interactions for our customer base. And so with that, we have a really deep and rich understanding of what channels work best in which situations. We will understand trends for an individual customer that we serve, for example, but we don't yet connect that to the individual. What exactly does Phil like to see? Would he rather receive an SMS versus an email for certain type of comms? That sometimes exists within the customer's tech stack. So either within, let's say, a marketing technology platform that they're using, maybe it sits in their CDP, but then bridging that gap between that technology and what we can provide is still something that remains to be solved. And of course, we are keen to do that.
Yeah, and I guess it's important because I mean at the moment, again, just through personal experience, a lot of those sort of intelligent apps are not very sophisticated, so they often make sort of fairly inaccurate links. I don't know if you use a shopping website, for example, and you buy a load of stuff, then they start telling you, oh well, so and so bought this, not realizing that you might have bought it for a birthday present for someone, so it's got nothing, you're not remotely interested in it, but it happens to be interesting. So is it how, I suppose, how sophisticated do you think can this intelligence become, bearing in mind that we do a lot of stuff that is almost random and therefore doesn't fit in a nice easy pattern, if you like?
I mean, it has the potential to be highly sophisticated. I would say like deeply one-to-one marketing for every single person, right? You would understand, it wouldn't be your generic personas. A female in her 30s that likes to go jogging or whatever, like you'd actually be able to get down to what do your usage patterns look like? What exactly do you personally like? Do you typically open emails over SMS? How long does it take you? Do you respond? You could start connecting it to broader things as well outside of what that individual brand might be selling you. So I think that's exactly where we need to get careful around what data can and will get shared across platforms. How does it get used? But the promise, I definitely think, is there to be able to deliver those relevant and personalized experiences that people ultimately want. So I'm definitely looking forward to once we figure that out.
No, I mean, it's been great to chat and fascinating insights you'll get. Yeah, I mean, obviously the world's moving fast and we all have our
Yeah,
different perspectives, but it's very exciting times. And thank you so much for sharing your insights into what's going on. And maybe, I don't know if 6 months will be too soon, but maybe, whenever we can find out what is actually happening a bit further on. But for now, at least, Sophie, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
absolutely. Thank you, Phil.